Welcome to the Just One International podcast, where we empower ministers and believers to share their testimony to equip the body of Christ. As we all know, we overcome our enemy by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony.
Hello, my name is Peter, and you're listening to episode 1 of the Just One podcast. We are here with Wayne Heins in McCloud, Oklahoma. Wayne, thank you for meeting with us today.
You're welcome.
So explain, what do you do in McLoud?
Well, we have a restaurant, Clarabelle's, which is my wife's dream, and that keeps a roof over our head. It supplies us what we need in the basics to do what we do otherwise. When Discover Oklahoma was here, they interviewed her and they interviewed me, and then they wanted to know what I wanted to tell the audience as we got ready to film. And I said, well, I'd tell them that Clarabelle's is not our first passion. And the guy had the color drain out of his face, like, why am I here? And he says, what do you mean? I said, well, I tell him that Clarabelle's is our second passion. Our first passion is taking care of homeless people and people on the street and destitute poverty, and Clarabelle's is what enables us to do our first passion.
How long have you had the restaurant?
We've been here 3.5 years now. We came to McLoud 10 years ago. We started Grace Point Church. When we started that, we had services, of course, like churches do, and then we had an outreach center. We had people laugh at us when we come to town because I had an open sign. And why would a church need an open sign? Well, we had an open sign to let people know when we were there, and to get people used to seeing that there's an open sign, meaning somebody is there, because so many churches are just there when they have service and they're not there otherwise.
What was, when starting up your ministry, especially in McLoud, what was the point of no return?
Well, we came with a point of no return. Wow. I left a full-time staff position with the church to start Grace Point Church. You know, we functioned well for about 5 years, and then I was on my way back from a mission trip to the Philippines, and unbeknownst to me, got a blood clot in my right calf. I got deathly sick over a period of months, and walked into the emergency room at Baptist Hospital one morning and found out I had a massive saddle pulmonary embolism. My lungs were 95% blocked. It was a miracle that I lived to get there, and a miracle that I walked in under my own power. They took me straight to triage without asking my name or for my insurance paperwork. Spent a while in the hospital, and I spent about 4.5 years so weak I could only get out of bed in the morning, go to the bathroom, start a pot of coffee, had to sit down in the recliner because I didn't have enough strength to stand up and wait for it to make a cup of coffee. I literally had to rest all week in order to be able to pastor the church on Sunday morning. And literally on Sunday mornings for a couple of years, my dear brother Leonard, that was my associate, I would sit in a chair, a stool, and he would stand next to me for me to either lean against or to hold me in the stool because I was too weak to stand up. That's a point of no return. So I've seen God restore my health to this point where I'm working in the restaurant Tuesday through Friday, and we're going to Shawnee to feed and clothe homeless people during the week, and we're going to Oklahoma City on Sunday afternoons, and we're taking care of people that walk in the front door of the restaurant during the week, and you know. But the bottom line is when you've done all that you can do, whatever that is, the only thing you have left is to trust God. and you remind yourself that God has been faithful to you in your past, and you have all those Bible stories to remind yourself of. And so sometimes you just sort of set your jaw and say, man, I don't know. I don't understand, and I can't explain. But there's one thing I know, is that God will take care of me. If you see that blue vehicle out front here, I know people listening can't see that, but that's our mobile clothes closet, and it's got everything a person needs from shelter, sleeping bags, tarps, clothing, sunglasses, reading glasses, personal care products. What's neat about Blue, as we call her, we're looking for a vehicle, and we've been looking at a different vehicle, and it was $1,500, and we're going, okay, God, if we're going to get a vehicle, you're going to have to provide. We got a call about this vehicle here, and we went and looked at it, and it was perfect. And we come back, and we were at the restaurant that night about closing time, and a friend of ours walks in that we hadn't known very long and hadn't known very well, but he knew our hearts and knew the restaurant and was a regular customer. And he says, have you found a vehicle yet? And I said, well, yeah. He says, how much is it? I said, $1,500. He says, how much of that you got? I said, at the moment, I don't have anything. He says, well, when are you going to decide? I said, well, I'm supposed to go test drive it again tomorrow, and I got to give him an answer. He says, you think that's what you want? I said, yeah. So he gets up and leaves. Come to find out, he went out to his car, come back with his briefcase. He gets out a checkbook and writes a check for $1,500.
No way.
Yes way. A gentleman that was in the restaurant this last week, he came in the afternoon early, and I got to visit with him sitting down here and tell him a little bit more about what we did. And I saw him go to the front and get another flyer off the front counter, and didn't know what he was doing. And he comes back up to the counter, calls me out of the kitchen, and hands me a piece of paper and says, this is for your ministry. And it's a folded up check. Well, it's rude to open the check up in front of him. You know, you just slip it in your pocket and thank him and go on and whatnot. He walks out the front door, and I go back to the kitchen and get my wife and tell him what just happened, and we open up the check, and the check is for $500. I could live better if I ran the restaurant 7 days a week, but I couldn't do what I do for what the passion in my heart is if I ran the restaurant 7 days a week. And so the restaurant keeps a roof over my head, it keeps the electric on, keeps shoes on my feet. But the ministry, there's no money left over really to support the ministry. But God has just miraculously provided at every turn. So we've never operated this ministry from a place of, you know, my parents had money, or we have a big church that supports us, or everything that we have done has been a faith journey. And it's been incredible.
What are some stories that when you actually went out to the corners of Oklahoma, what are some stories that people come to you in need? What are some stories that you can see in their life that they were blessed with?
You see a little bit of everything. We've seen everything from people weep, literally weep, because you had a pair of shoes for them. We've seen people that we've literally physically picked up, put in a van, and drove to an emergency room because they had a broken foot, and they're, you know, you're homeless. You're living out of a tent or out of a underside of a tarp, and you can't walk. You don't have ability to call an ambulance. But the best story to tell, for a long time at Iron King up at, I don't know, around 2nd in Virginia, just a block or two from the day center in Oklahoma City, the little overhang on the front side of the building that faces east had a group of folks that were there on a regular basis. So we had gotten to know a group of fellows that were there over a 7 or 8 month period of time, and we fed them and clothed them, and we'd gather up in a circle and pray with them before that we left. And then we brought them back one weekend, a group of 7 of them. We set up a big family-sized tent out here at the lake, and paid for a lot for the night, and had a little cookout with some church members, and brought them to church in the morning and took them back the next afternoon. And after 2 or 3 times of doing that, the response from one of them was, do we really have to go back? And that's a tough question, because it pulls at your heartstring.
When you hear Oklahoma City, Oklahoma State is one of the highest in homeless people, one of the highest in drug capital of the nation, one of the most highest in prostitution, sex trafficking, what do you say to that, and what do you do when you are come across with the, there's only so much that I can do, and do you really see a change in the community?
Well, on one hand, Jesus said you'll always have the poor with you. What I would say is the church has to get outside the walls. The church has to stop being ingrown. The church has to start operating in a spirit of grace that says, you know what, it's not about people getting cleaned up to come in, to hear our message and be like us. It's about us going out and demonstrating grace and meeting needs to people who haven't yet deserved it. To meet needs, you got to get to know people, and you got to know the story. And until you can build a relationship, you really can't meet needs. We got to focus on what we can do.
Yeah.
And that means getting ourselves face to face, eye to eye, with real people who aren't invisible anymore. We had one gentleman, we took care of him for 5 years in front of the Goodwill building at 5th and Walker. Mm. His battalion went into battle, and when his battalion came out from battle, he was the only one that came out. And so he's got survivor's guilt. He could get all kinds of services. He will not accept them. But he'll take a blanket. If we pick up his wet blanket, he'll take a dry blanket. You hear me? If we take his wet blanket away from him, he'll take a dry blanket from us. But he won't ask for a dry blanket. What he will ask for, this is hilarious, we'll give him a meal, he'll take a meal. We'll give him a glass of iced tea in the summertime, and he'll ask for a second glass of iced tea. Or in the wintertime, we'll give him a cup of coffee, and he'll ask for a second cup of coffee. That's all he'll ask for. One day, I knew we made a breakthrough when he asked me if I could get him a mirror and some shaving cream and a razor. And the next Sunday I came back, after I left and went and got him those things, and came back. The following Sunday I came back and he was clean shaven. I'd never seen him clean shaven before, But you don't have enough recording time for stories I could tell you. But the deal is, we're insulated in our church sanctuaries, and we don't have any comprehension of need. And we write a check to the mission fund, or we write a check to whatever missionary organization had a speaker come through. But we've never touched human filth. We've never experienced hugging somebody in which, between the nicotine and the alcohol and the not having had a shower for who knows how long, and clothes that were filthy. I've literally hugged people on the street. I have serious asthma issues. I've literally hugged people on the street, gone into an asthma attack, and had to go to the emergency room. and passing the person that's a panhandler and listen to the news about how he's a fraud tells us that we did the right thing by just writing our check. And yet, there's real people with real need, just like in the story of the Good Samaritan. And what I'm trying to say is most of the time, we don't even have the guts, we don't even make the sacrifice to go and get an up-close look at their need, much less do anything. We're insulated from even seeing that need. And what I'm saying is, I've seen that need, and I couldn't help but do something about that need.
Well, our time is up. So thank you, Wayne, so much for being on the Just One International podcast. Probably have you back again, for sure.
All right. Look forward to it.
For sure. You've been listening to Just One International podcast, where we edify the saints and lift up people to be their very best humbly before God. The Just One podcast is hosted by Stephen Tarpley and Peter Friedlander, and is produced by Awaken Studios. If you would like to get in contact with us or submit your story, visit justonepodcast.net. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever podcasts are found. I'm Peter, and I will see you next time.